Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Productivity Boosters and Stress Reducers podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Heeb, and I can't thank you enough for listening in. Each episode, I will discuss a new tip or trick that will help you to live a productive and efficient life, professionally and personally. If you're ready to find your productivity rhythm, relieve stress, and meet your goals faster, then this is the podcast for you. This podcast is sponsored by Your Choice Concierge, created to make your life easier by providing flexible hourly, personal, and professional assistance. Let us handle your busy tasks so you can focus on what's important. You can learn more about Your Choice Concierge by clicking the link in the description. Today's episode is for anyone who has ever second-guessed a decision or held back from starting a project, or obsessed over every little detail before putting something out into the world. We are diving into a topic that affects so many of us. It is perfectionism. And more importantly, how embracing your imperfections can actually unlock greater productivity, reduce stress, and lead to a more authentic and fulfilling life. So, whether you're a recovering perfectionist or just now realizing perfectionism might be holding you back, this episode is for you. Let's start with how perfectionism is typically defined. It is the tendency to set unrealistically high standards and to judge oneself harshly when those standards aren't met. It's not the same as striving for excellence. It's more about fear of failure, fear of judgment, or just fear of not being enough. You may not realize it, but perfectionism is tied to productivity. It hinders productivity in several major ways by creating mental roadblocks that prevent progress. It tricks us into thinking we're working towards excellence, but it often results in missed opportunities, paralysis by analysis, excessive delays, burnout, and reduced creative output. Often the perfectionist will delay starting tasks because they feel everything needs to be perfectly planned or conditions must be ideal before beginning. For example, you may want to start a blog, but you spend months tweaking your website layout, your logo, even font choices, never even publishing a single post because your website just isn't ready, not up to your standards. Your productivity is stalled because you're stuck in prep mode. In my opinion, this is procrastination disguised as preparation. This also shows itself in other prep type work like editing. Perfectionists often spend excessive time reviewing, editing, and refining even the most minor details. This is going to slow down output and your productivity. Another example, say you're writing an email to a client and spending over an hour rewording it. You're checking synonyms, you're checking formatting, all the things. That's 60 minutes spent on a task that should have taken 10. Another thing that hinders perfectionist productivity and leads to procrastination is fear of failure or criticism. Perfectionists often fear that anything less than perfect will lead to rejection or judgment. So they avoid taking action altogether. Another example would be you have a great idea, but you don't actually launch the product or the idea because you fear bad reviews. Instead of getting feedback to improve, you stay in a holding pattern, and months go by with zero progress. Sometimes perfectionists will completely skip procrastination and just avoid new things or new challenges altogether. So, unless the perfectionist is confident that they can succeed perfectly, they won't even start. So, another example, a perfectionist may turn down a speaking opportunity because they've never done it before, and the fear of stumbling or not doing it perfectly is just too much. This, of course, will lead to a missed opportunity to grow. You'll miss out on gaining exposure and, of course, building your own confidence. In addition to procrastination, a perfectionist may find themselves unable to prioritize things properly. So, to a perfectionist, everything feels equally important because perfectionism tells you that every detail matters. Now, this can create decision fatigue and inefficiency. So, again, another example, a perfectionist will spend their morning maybe rearranging icons on their desktop to they think they're getting themselves organized, or color coding a to-do list instead of maybe focusing on a major project deadline. That's because those low impact tasks make them feel productive without the pressure, but they aren't productive when there's more important things to take care of. I'm not saying those little things like getting yourself organized aren't important, but when there are bigger fish to fry, that's definitely not something that should be at the top of a to do list. Perfectionists also have a hard time delegating, which can definitely affect their productivity and their ability to grow. Now, this is something I know a lot about in my line of business. A lot of our Your Choice clients have a hard time letting go of things when they first start working with us. Actually, one of the things I enjoy most about working with our clients is seeing their ability to grow and their stress reduced when they realize that everything doesn't have to be done by them to make sure it's done right. Most perfectionists believe that no one else can do it the right way. So they take on too much and they burn out. Trying to do everything themselves only leads to a constant feeling of being behind and overwhelmed. Okay, so I think that covers most of how perfectionism can affect your productivity. So now let's chat a little bit about how perfectionism increases your stress and your anxiety. Perfectionism fuels self criticism, it creates a constant sense of pressure to perform flawlessly. The perfectionist will often feel that any mistake, no matter how small, is a reflection of their worth or competence. This creates ongoing anxiety around even the most basic tasks. An example of this might be something as simple as sending an email. Say you're sending a report to your boss and you've reread it 10 times, terrified of a typo. Even after submitting it, you can't stop thinking about whether you should have rephrased things. This is going to cause ongoing tension and stress. And let's be honest, most people, even bosses, aren't going to care about a simple mistake, including a typo. But a perfectionist's inner critic is constantly active, judging everything they do as not good enough. This, of course, wears down self esteem and builds anxiety over time. In addition, they also rarely feel satisfied. Even after achieving something great, they quickly move to what could have been better, robbing themselves of joy and adding unnecessary stress. They may also feel an intense need to impress others or to appear flawless. For example, they may be constantly concerned about saying the wrong thing or being judged for what they say. Now, of course, this is going to make even the most basic everyday interactions with people stressful. It's pretty simple. Perfectionism breeds a cycle of fear, which leads to avoidance, which leads to guilt, which leads to stress, or a cycle of high expectations, then constant dissatisfaction, then anxiety, or the cycle of overdoing, then experiencing burnout, then resentment, and then emotional fatigue. Unfortunately, none of these cycles are going to lead to a very happy, fulfilling life. But fortunately, there are strategies you can implement to help you to embrace imperfections and live a productive and happy life. So let's start with adopting a growth mindset. This is the belief that your abilities, intelligence, and talents can be developed over time through effort, learning, and persistence. It shifts focus from looking perfect to learning and evolving. Growth doesn't come from getting it right. It comes from getting it wrong and trying again with more knowledge. Another strategy to try is setting good enough goals. And I'm saying good enough with my air quotations, just so you know. But this will help you to take action and prevent the paralysis that comes with perfectionism. For example, before starting a task, define your MVP. That's short for minimum viable product. So instead of a perfectly designed website, aim for one functional landing page. You can also use the 80-20 rule, which means that you focus on the 20% that creates 80% of the result. Now, self-compassion is another thing I want to touch on. Practicing self-compassion is also a very important strategy when it comes to embracing imperfections. You can't expect progress from someone you constantly criticize, and this includes yourself. Try to talk to yourself like you would a friend. Would you say, "You're so dumb," to your best friend for making a mistake? I don't think so. So don't talk to yourself that way either. You can also use mantras like, "I am allowed to be a work in progress," or "Done is better than perfect." In addition, you should also celebrate your wins, even if they're small wins. Now, I suggest keeping a wins journal. Write down one thing you're proud of each day, even if it was messy. You should also share that progress with your friends or an accountability buddy. Another strategy is limiting your revisions. For example, give yourself a 2-edit rule. After the second review, it's done. Or set a timer. I have 30 minutes to revise this presentation, and then I hit send. Doing this will prevent spiraling into endless tweaking. You should also do your best to declutter your environment and your mind to help with embracing imperfections. Perfectionists often clutter their lives with unrealistic goals and unfinished tasks. You can use a prioritization method like the Eisenhower matrix or the Ivy Lee method if you need assistance with this. You also want to make sure you physically declutter. A clean space encourages mental clarity and more action. I actually have done a previous podcast on this. So if you want to dive deeper into a clear workspace, clear environment, and how that helps you, definitely take a listen. Um, and the last strategy, actually, I want to touch on is a big one. It is reframing failure. It is one of the most powerful strategies for embracing imperfections and overcoming the grip of perfectionism. Instead of viewing failure as proof that you're flawed or not good enough, reframing allows you to see it as a normal, necessary part of growth and learning. It will help reduce shame, build resilience, increase creativity, and promote self compassion. Reframing failure means changing your interpretation of a negative experience. So instead of seeing a negative experience as something to be ashamed of, you view it as maybe feedback and not final judgment, or a lesson and not a loss, or a step forward, not a step back. To practice reframing failure successfully, you will need to do a few things. First, pause and acknowledge. Don't bury the failure or deny how you feel. Instead, recognize it. Second, detach your identity. Separate events in your life from your self-worth. Third, ask yourself reflective questions. Shift from judgment to curiosity. So you may ask yourself, what part of this did go well? What did I learn? Or what can I do differently next time? Next, create a learning statement. So, for example, you could say, "This taught me that I need to prepare earlier next time, and that's doable." This will turn the failure into a positive, forward focused insight. And lastly, share or normalize your imperfections. talk about your mistakes with people you trust. This will build connection and diffuses shame. Letting go of perfection isn't about being sloppy. It's about reducing pressure, reclaiming joy, and allowing space for growth. It's important to note that perfectionism is a habit, and like any habit, it can be replaced with healthier ones. By taking small, intentional steps towards embracing those imperfections, your imperfections, you unlock the freedom to be creative, productive, and happy. Now, some closing thoughts before I wrap this up. First off, please remember that imperfection is real, it's human. Perfection is a myth. Every successful person you admire has made mistakes, failed, and grown through trial and error. Secondly, remember that authenticity builds trust. Whether in relationships, leadership, or business, people relate more to vulnerability and realness than polished perfection. And last, but certainly not least, remember that progress over perfection leads to momentum. Done is better than perfect, and action creates clarity and growth. So keep showing up imperfectly, but powerfully. That's all for this week's episode of Productivity Boosters and Stress Reducers. Be sure to check back soon for our next episode. I'll be discussing hustle culture and how it can significantly undermine productivity and increase stress over time. This includes how you can be successful without subscribing to the hustle culture. It's all about working smarter, not harder. If you want to learn more about the importance of embracing imperfections, have feedback about this episode, or a specific topic you'd like to hear about in the future, please email me at info@yourchoice-concierge.com. I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you also subscribe to the Your Choice Concierge YouTube channel, where you can find some examples of the tips and tricks I discuss on the show. Thanks again for listening. I'm Stephanie Heeb, and I hope you'll join me next time for more tips and tricks to live a productive and efficient life, professionally and personally. Have you considered starting your own podcast but haven't had the time? Check out Buzzsprout. They make launching and managing your podcast effortless. Trust me. If I can do it, anyone can. Clicking the Buzzsprout link in the description will let them know we sent you and get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you decide to sign up for a paid plan. Thanks again to our sponsor, Your Choice Concierge. Until next time, productive people.